Okay, hello dear colleagues. Today we are going to hold our usual Monday seminar, and today it is devoted to the topic of bibliographic network analysis. And today me and also my colleagues who are listed here on this slide, I will be a representative of my colleagues, and I'm going to share some of the results of our actually study that we made especially for the paper which we submitted to a special issue of the journal Sociology 4M. As a reminder, we decided to make a special issue to this journal, and now we are preparing this issue, and so of course we decided to send our paper as well. And this paper, of course, it is written in Russian, and it is devoted to the comparative analysis of Web of Science and e-library capabilities for the analysis of bibliographic networks. Why bibliographic network analysis? Why? We use the case of Russian sociologists, and in this presentation, I'm going to tell you some of the results of this work, because it looks like it was quite an interesting work that we done. And today I'm going to share some of the results, and if the paper will be accepted and published, so I do hope that till the end of the year we will be able to share the whole publication with you, because usually in this journal all the publications are open. Today I'm going to talk about, of course, the relevance of this study. So why we needed to make this comparative analysis. And at first, you have seen the title of today's presentation, and I'm going to tell you why we are talking about bibliographic network analysis, why we are talking about Russian sociologists, and why we decided to compare these two databases. And then I'm planning to come up with the problem statement and the aim of the current study. And then I will tell you about the methodology of this study, and then I will share some of the results of the comparison. And before we start, I should say that, of course, it's just, it's actually the first presentation of this study. And unfortunately, I didn't have enough time to, as the paper is published in Russian, not published, but prepared in Russian, I didn't have time to translate all the tables. So I'm really sorry for our English-speaking audience. But for those who understand Russian, I think it will not be a problem. But anyway, I will be commenting everything. Why we talk about bibliographic networks in general? I think that those, of course, those of us who are from the lab, of course, we know that we study bibliographic networks. But for some external listeners, it is important to say that this direction is one of the topics that we are developing in the laboratory, and it is connected to the sphere of sociology of science. And of course, what we can notice now in the starting from the second half of the 20th century, we can see that the science is going through a lot of transformation, and it is becoming more and more globalized. However, there are some issues, as we know, but still, it is seen that now the activity of scientists is not reduced exclusively to individual creativity, because we see that the collaboration in science is growing, and there are a lot of types of relations in science. Because so that's why it is important to study the development of scientific disciplines and social interactions between scientists and between their groups to determine their effectiveness, to see how effective they are and how well the fields are developing. So there are specially developed designed fields called bibliometrics and scientometrics, which analyze which tries to answer to all these questions about the development of science. And there is a special direction which is called bibliographic network analysis, which imply that we study the structures of communications between different bibliographic units. So we can study co-authorship, we can study citation, co-citation, bibliographic coupling among not only authors, but also publications, journals, keywords, and so on. And so this is one of the topics on which we are working. And why we talk about Russian sociologists? Actually, I'm myself sociologist, and yeah, of course, it is important and interesting to think about the direction of your own field. But it's not only about interest, but also about the special history of formation of this community in Russia, because it can be characterized as non-linear and sometimes even dramatic. And the Russian sociologists who study and who describe the formation of sociological science in Russia, they say that there were two periods. One pre-revolutionary period, when the sociological knowledge was developed in the context of ideas of foreign social researchers. And then actually the sociology after the revolution, sociology was kind of banned. It was called the bourgeois science, and so that's why there were no such science. But in 1960s and 70s, the sociology somehow grew out of factory research, of the research which was done in factories and organizations. And of course, it is characterized with the absence of links with so-called bourgeois science. And of course, it is regional in some ways, but on the other side, if it is not connected to the knowledge of the whole other world, so then the question arises how well our colleagues who are working in this field, how well they are integrated in the international community. So that's why it is an important issue to study, but at the same time, if we talk about some field as the collection of different scientific schools, which were kind of developed during Soviet period, now we can ask some questions about it, because there is definitely there is an inequality between capitals, between Moscow and St. Petersburg and other regions, and how well these schools are represented in different regions of Russia. So that's why actually we decided that it would be interesting to study the community of Russian sociologists and how well they are collaborating with each other. And that's why we applied for a grant, and we received the grant of Russian Scientific Foundation in 2021. Actually, now we already successfully finished this grant. And the aim was to study the structure and patterns of collaboration in the scientific community of Russian sociologists. And we looked at collaboration as co-authorship of a scientific article. So that's why that is how this topic, Russian sociologists, is connected to bibliographic network analysis, because this is the main methodology. And here you can see the list of the project team of those who worked in this project. And next, let's talk about the next question: why there is a need to compare different databases? Why there is a question of databases? So I would start from the idea from the statement that we did some we previously we analyzed the direction of other fields, scientific fields such as social network analysis or scientometric field itself, or some other fields, and usually we were these were the projects implemented with Vladimir Bdagel and the colleagues from Slovenia, and as the data source we used Web of Science, and we were analyzing the not the national scientific community, but the community, the scientific community in general, so like international one. So that's why it was it was an obvious thing to take data from Web of Science and to analyze it. And we used so the typical methodological workflow of our analysis was that anyway we need to build to collect bibliographic database, to construct networks for further analysis, and then apply network analysis methods to identify trends and to make research in the area of our study. Of course, selection of the bibliographic database is very important. So we all know about this GIGO rule, yeah, so garbage in, garbage out. So if we have something which is not really good as income, as input, so then we will get some strange results as an output. So that's why when we make bibliographic network analysis, it is very important to find a good and to find a database which will actually have the information that we need, right? Now there are a lot of different databases, and previously we used Web of Science, but there are many more, and some of them are so-called generally oriented, so there would be different, of course there would be some differences, but for example Web of Science and Scopus and Google Scholar or OpenAlex, they are somehow they present they collect the information on different articles from different disciplines. As we have Ivan here, so I think he's an expert in this field, and I'm just going to say that there are different options. And so there are also other bibliographic databases such as Digital Science Dimensions or Lens, which was initially done as the databases for patient data. But then I think now they also include articles. Also, some bibliographic databases would be more oriented towards medical research, such as PubMed, Cochrane, or also there are some scientific social media like Stipander, Mendeley, and some others. And of course, in the fields of scientometrics and bibliometrics, researchers are very much interested in these databases, and they make a lot of analysis and comparisons of these databases to show what are the pros and cons of usage of these of these different databases. Even though it was shown that this newly launched databases actually have a lot of benefits in usage, it is still shown that Web of Science and Scopus are kind of gold standard if you make such an analysis. Of course, many special instruments are developed to analyze the data from these databases. But at the same time, here I also show some packages and programs which work with different data sources. So I just mentioned bibliometrics or BiblioShiny. So this is the package developed in R, or also it is developed in Python. And BiblioShiny is the version which you can use just in the web interface. And also there is a program WOS Viewer or SiteNet Explorer, and they take different kinds of data sources as input, and they are able to make different types of analysis: co-citation, bibliographic coupling, co-authorship, co-occurrence networks, and so on. And of course, there are many many special characteristics and special features of these packages and types of analysis that they can allow. But anyway, there are some options, and the option that we used before is the methodological approach which was proposed by our colleagues, as I said, and usually we used Web of Science data as data source, and then there is a special program for network creation which is called WOS2PAEC, and then we use PAEC for analysis. And why this approach is really beneficial is that it is nice to have these kinds of programs and packages, but sometimes you just need to kind of understand more precisely how something is counted, like how some measure is done. Yeah, because of course something can be seen as a kind of black box. Yeah, so you use WOS Viewer and you just press some buttons there and you just get some results. And I don't say that something is not good, but I just say that sometimes when you want to make some deep analysis, you want just to understand which type of normalization you use. So of course it is much better to be capable of each step of your research, and that's why. So this was the approach that we used before. And when we would like to use the same approach to study the domestic literature, yeah, so the literature in Russian language, then of course we have some problems. And these problems are connected with data coverage and also methodology for data analysis. And talking about data coverage, of course, we understand that representation of Russian works in international databases very much connected to the inclusion of domestic journals into these databases, so in indexation of these journals. And of course, we understand that now, previously, anyway, it can be characterized as partial inclusion. And if we would not take into account this domestic literature and just would look at the scientific productivity only based on international databases, then we would underestimate the volume of scientific literature which is produced in Russia. So that's why it is kind of important to be able to study this domestic literature as well. But when we talk about methodology, so then the problem arises. Then the existing approaches, which we used before quite successfully, they cannot be directly applied to analyze this data because this is in Russian language. And of course, in these instruments that we used, there are a lot of algorithms developed specially to work with words, normalization, lemmatization, authors disambiguation, and a lot of other words with Asian. I'm kidding, but anyway, you understand. So there are special algorithms which were done, which were used for English language, and of course Russian language is another kind of language, and it's not so easy to directly apply this methodologies to study Russian literature. So we need to adapt existing approaches or even develop new approaches and tools for bibliometric analysis to study Russian literature. And also another kind of side effect of this methodological questions is that methodology of bibliometric network analysis is very rarely used, so not much often to study Russian science, and we do not see a lot of studies, at least I mean in Russian journals, which would use this methodology and which would describe some fields based on Russian literature, or even based on international data sets. So this methodology in general is not really often used by our scientists. So that's why we formulate our aim as a need. I mean, we need to develop a full-fledged methodology which would allow us to collect, pre-process, and analyze bibliographic data in Russian language. And of course, we would like to use our previous experience of working with this Web of Science data. And going further, if we are not able, I mean, if it's not a good idea to analyze Web of Science database, so then we should stick to some other database. And of course, the first option would be eLibrary, because this is the largest database of scientific publications in Russia. And what else we should say about it is that it is integrated with the Russian Index of Science Citation, Российский индекс научного цитирования. And there is a information and analytical system, which is called Science Index, which allow to measure publication activity of scientists and organizations. But there is no any instrument for network analysis, and even there is no approach how you can actually collect some, how you can make some collections kind of in an institutionalized way. So we were working with the library under contract, so that's why we had the access to API service to collect the data. But for just the general researchers, it's not the same situation as with Web of Science. Of course, not. I mean, now not for Russian scientists, but before you could just come to Web of Science and you could make your collection, and then you would get all the description, all your articles that you found with full descriptions, with all the information about these articles. And it's not working like this with eLibrary. And in general, we do not know any methodology for collection, pre-processing, and analysis of data from eLibrary. So that's why we thought that it could be a kind of side effect of our project implementation. I mean, the project developed the collaboration practices of Russian sociologists. And that's why we are very much interested in these methodological questions, and we are not interested not just to get some data and make analysis and show the substantive results, how well Russian sociologists collaborate, but we rather use this case as the example, as a case study on which we can develop some methodology. So that's why we are very much interested in these methodological questions and issues. And at this study, which I'm presenting today, we decided to make a comparative analysis of scientific publication databases, Web of Science and eLibrary. And we wanted to look at the features and capabilities of both of these databases in sense of analysis of bibliographic networks of Russian authors. And of course, to give some recommendations, and also not just to give recommendations, but to understand, can we use Web of Science as a sole source of information? Should we stick to e-library because they say that they also include Web of Science. I will tell about it later. Or should we somehow combine these two databases, or should we think about some other databases? So that's why we started this project. Yeah, but one of the types of these research questions is these are the topics of, I mean, sorry, these are the questions on methodology and instruments, yeah, that we use. But another type of research questions that we can ask in this case is other questions about orientations of scientists towards international kind of sphere or domestic. Because it looks like these two different databases, one international, another domestic, can be seen as the kind of showrooms, yeah, of different communities. And it looks like it is interesting to compare how how well we are presented in this domestic sphere and international sphere, and if there are any differences between those who are publishing here and there. So yeah, there were previous studies, at least in the sphere of sociology, where there were some hypotheses formulated, and one of them would be the study of Mikhail Sokolov of 2009, I think. And then there is a study, yeah, there is actually article of Sokolov of Titaev and of 2013, and both of these articles are stating that there are different groups of sociologists, and they are looking to different kind of directions. So there is a group which is oriented to work with international community, and there is a group which is not communicating with international community, and which is just which is interested in this domestic group of sociologists. So that's why we can try to answer to such kinds of questions with this type of analysis. Okay, so now I will tell you about the methodology that we used. Of course, we used the literature review as the basis of our future work, and we looked at different works of similar works which are compared in different databases. And based on this literature review, we made a list of different parameters according to which we can compare these two databases. And these parameters can fit into three categories, kind of three bases. One is the process of working with data, then data sets, and then the next level is the networks which we can make out of these data sets. And sorry, probably I was not precise enough. So for this second and third levels, we need to, so usually the framework of such analysis would be that you collect the data sets from all the bibliographic databases that you compare, and you will, the scientists take these databases, they collect these databases according to the same rule. Yeah, so that they have some idea how, some strategy how they collect the data from these databases, and then they compare them on the levels of data sets, and also on the levels, sometimes on the levels of networks, which can be done out of these data sets. And so this was our approach that we used. We looked at different parameters on this basis, and talking about process of working with data, we were looking at data collection features format and structure of the resulting data sets, and also amount of metadata which is used in these bibliographic descriptions. Then we looked at the possibilities of data pre-processing and also constructing files for network bibliometric analysis with existing software. And on this analysis is done. We compared these parameters based on descriptive analysis. Just a very simple comparison. Then on the level 2, we were comparing different data sets. So as I said, the idea was that we have similar data sets collected from each database, and then we looked at the size of data sets, number of publications, then dynamics of the number of publications over time, number of missing values in metadata, in bibliographic descriptions, and also number of unique bibliometric units. So how many publications, authors, journals, keywords, and so on we can get for this from these two databases. And we used statistical analysis here to make some comparison. And then finally, we used data sets and we constructed different types of networks. And we compared two databases according to distribution of unique authors and keywords by frequency of occurrence in publications. Then distribution of co-authors by authors. Then we also looked at top most frequently used journals and keywords, and top authors by number of works and number of co-authors. So we looked at the general distributions and also extracted the top units in these networks. And as the mean of analysis, we used statistical and network analysis of two-mode networks, and also a network of collaboration, which is one-mode network. And here we can look again at different levels. Yeah, from one point of view, we can measure the intersection between data sets in terms of units of analysis, and look at the sizes, yeah, of how many which units we have. But also we can look at the results of the analysis, and we can make a comparison in terms of how similar results, how similar are the results that we get. So not only from the point of view that some units, how many units we have, but also from this substantial point of view, like which interpretation, which result this analysis allows us to, which results these two databases allows us to get, which interpretations we can make. So it was the idea which we implemented in our study. And as for methods that we used for analysis, we used bibliometrics and biblioshiny packages, WOS to PIAC and PIAC programs, and also Python. And so the first three were used for the analysis of Web of Science and for e-library data, as there were no kind of frameworks which were presented already presented for e-library data. So of course we needed to develop our own approach, and actually here you can see that we registered the patent READ, so a result of scientific activity. So we registered a program which is called bit-elib, which is the special program for collection and pre-processing of bibliographic data in Russian language from the e-library database. So this is very precise. So this is Russian. This is Russian language in special in only one database. But so this was the kind of side effect of the project on sociologists which we implemented. And so this is the methodology that was used for comparison. So at first, I would like to present these databases to you, make some description of them. So I guess that a lot of participants know a Web of Science database. So it is interesting to see how it was developing, because the basis of this database is Science Citation Index, which was developed by Eugene Garfield in 1960s. And then he proposed an approach to rate scientific journals. And he proposed how to make a kind of core of scientific discipline. So there are some journals which are in the core. And this was called Web of Science Core Collection. So Web of Science Core Collection includes core journals in different scientific disciplines. And later, there were three more databases were included into this core collection. So which are Social Science Citation Index, Arts and Humanities Citation Index, and Emerging Sources Citation Index. So all the journals which are indexed in these indices are seen as the core. So they are included into Web of Science core collection. And additionally, in Web of Science now, we can also find conference proceeding citation index, book citation index, and also there are national citation indices included, including Russian Science Citation Index, which is the product done by eLibrary database, electronic library. So this is important. So it shows that this index is not included into Web of Science core collection, but you can find it in Web of Science in general. And talking a bit more about eLibrary, so as I said, it is integrated with the Russian Index of Science Citation. And I would say that there is a little bit, how to say, so this is called Russian Index of Science Citation, so it would be Российский индекс научного цитирования, it would be RINS. But then, starting from 2016, there was a kind of joint project of eLibrary and Web of Science who decided that they would send best Russian journals from this Russian Index of Science Citation, from RINS, to Web of Science, and this would be Russian Science Citation Index. So I would say that I find it a little bit confusing that these two titles of these actually different entities, different databases, are called in such a similar way, because then sometimes you can kind of mismatch, you can not totally understand what is meant, because sometimes Российский индекс научного цитирования is translated into English like Russian Science Citation Index, but this is technically another database, and I will just try to show it to you. And there is another kind of union of publications, which is called Ядро RINS. This is Russian Index of Science Citation Core, and it includes Russian Science Citation Index, this joint project with Web of Science. Then the papers which are published, which are indexed, which are published by Russian authors and English and indexed in Scopus, and the same but indexed in Web of Science. So these three databases would would construct this Russian index of science citation core. Yeah, I just wrote here not to forget that it's interesting that starting from 2016, when there were just 5 journals which were included into all 3 databases, now in 2019 there were 74 journals which were included in these three databases. There was an intersection of this size. So now I wanted to show you some kind of visual scheme of eLibrary database, and because I think that it took some time for me to understand how it works, and so I'm going to share it with you. So we have this Russian index of science citation. Then, as we just discussed, there is a Russian science citation index, which is just a subset of this larger data set, right? Only up to 700 journals are included into this Russian citation index. Then, if we will compare this to Web of Science database, so then we would say that it is partly overlap this Web of Science database, but of course not fully. Of course, there are much more publications, but it is supposed that all the publications which are published in Web of Science by Russian authors, they are indexed by eLibrary. They are included into eLibrary. And some of the journals, some of the Russian journals, they are indexed in Web of Science, so that's why it is a subpart. The same situation is with Scopus, yes, because we have some journals which are indexed in Scopus, and they would also intersect in some part with Web of Science, and of course some of them are included into Russian Science Citation Index. I mean, yeah, some of them are included into Russian Science Citation Index. Yes, that's true. And then 3 of these 3, I mean, they're in not intersection, but all this, the union of all these 3 databases would be called a core of Russian Index of Science Citation. And what is interesting is that, as we also learned from our study, that eLibrary is actually not the same thing as Russian Index of Science Citation. So, because it is a bit larger, so not all the publications which are presented in eLibrary would be included into Russian Index of Science Citation. So this is a pretty, I would say this is a pretty complicated structure, but it is important to understand how it works if we are going to compare different databases. So if we talk about this eLibrary database that we have, and also Web of Science database. So once again, for Web of Science, we would have some journals which are indexed in Russian Science Citation Index, which would be Russian journals, but our scientists also publish papers in other journals, so that's why this set of papers would be more larger than just this Russian Science Citation Index. Okay, now let's move to the process, so to comparison that we made, and let's look at the process of working with data. And here I would start this comparison. So talking about the sizes of the data sets, you can see them on the slide. We had more than 75,000 of publication in eLibrary, and we had about 4,000 publications in Web of Science. And as I said, these data sets were collected through different projects. I think I told you about eLibrary, but I need to say more about Web of Science. So we have the project which is devoted to the development of Russian science in 1991-2022, based on the analysis of Web of Science data, which was collected by our colleague from Czech Republic. And the idea is that we are going to use network analysis for the analysis of this data. And what we did, we actually made a slice. So we cut it, this huge data set, which includes 1,200,000 of articles. We just extracted the subset in sociology, which was about 8,000 publications. And then out of these 8,000 publications, we cut it the time period that we needed. So because in eLibrary project, we were looking at the publications from 2010 to 2021. So we had this time coverage for our publications. So that's why we decided to have the same time period, and it resulted with this amount of articles, 4,000 articles. And of course, the strategy for the formation of data set was very different. So for eLibrary, we collected scientific articles in eLibrary journals, which are written by Russian authors in the subject area of sociology for the period which I mentioned. And the process was organized in such a way that we had a contract with Scientific Electronic Library, and it allowed us to go to API service and to collect the data set. And before this, our colleagues from Scientific Electronic Library, they made a list of IDs of articles which could be found according to the strategy that we used. So we had this list of 75,000 of IDs of articles. And as for Web of Science, the strategy was that our colleague was searching for scientific articles in sociology for the Russian authors. And so he used these fields, article, Russia, and sociology. And of course, he used specially written parser in Python to collect data. But as I said, if you have a smaller data set, it was even possible to collect the data just manually from Web of Science. And here you can see the page of each article in eLibrary. So it was in XML format, and we wrote a special parser to process, to get the data out of this field. So you can see that we have the whole information about the article, and each type of information is written in a special field. And so actually we decided that we would go to all the information which is possible to get, even though we were initially interested in collaboration practices and co-authorship, but we also took keywords and information about grants and so on. So everything which we were able to get. And as for the Web of Science, here you can see kind of example of the description of the article. And again, here we have all the fields, a lot of different fields where information is presented about the article. And we collect the full descriptions of articles with citations, with references which are used, cited references which are used by the authors. And we save it just a plain text, so this information is stored in just TXT form. For Web of Science, we had these full descriptions with cited references. So this is basically the structure of the data. So all the fields are, so we had information for all the fields. And here we show which kinds of metadata we used for each publication for eLibrary dataset. So we had publication ID, title, pages, number of pages, DOI, if it was there, if it was included. Then the information about support, the year when the publication was published, link, URL, and also reference and citations. I don't think that we have it, but I think it is, I meant to say that it is possible to get it because we have the link to each publication, but no, we don't have it in our dataset. And then we collected information for authors, and we decided to collect it up to 8 authors. So they were their names, IDs, affiliations, and IDs of their affiliations, IDs of their organizations. And then information about journal, you see a lot of things, and also what is important in the context of the current presentation, so that we have also information about inclusion of this journal into WOC, Web of Science, Scopus, and Russian Science Citation Index, and Russian Index of Science Citation. And also we had keywords in Russian and English language. And now this is the first slide where the information is not translated. I'm sorry. So here so we made a table of the metadata which is possible to get from 2 data sets that we use, and we just showed which types of metadata we have. So here on this slide, these are all possible options for publications. So basically you can see that actually the information which is provided in Web of Science and eLibrary is very similar. We just don't have, for instance, we don't have number of users, so how many times the publication was downloaded or accessed. And also, as I said, we do not have citing literature and number of, the list and number of citing literature, and we do have it in the full descriptions of Web of Science. And of course, we do not have something which is connected to the Russian language in Web of Science. Something like a title in Russian language or abstracts or keywords. Then talking about authors, we basically have the same information, but what is good for eLibrary is that we also have ID of author, and also we have ID of author's affiliation. And that's why actually at the beginning of this project, we thought that it would be a huge benefit of this database. It was not, I mean, it was partially, it was not fully the benefit. And then talking about journals, again, we have, you can see we have a lot of different information, but even for Russian database, we have a bit more kinds of metadata for journals. Then on the level of data preprocessing, talking about Web of Science, we used the approach which I already introduced, and this approach deals with the program WOS to Pipe, and it helps to get the, so here you can see the window of this program, And basically, you see that it is, so I will explain, it allows us to get information about keywords from different fields from the file, which we put here. So at first we use, we show which WOS file we use, and then the program reads this file, and we say that we need to get keywords from some fields, and also we say which kinds of files we would like to get. And usually in this CR field, which I showed you a little bit below here, so you can see that this is the cited reference, the reference which was cited by the author. So of course, so it would be like Ядов В.А. 1998, стратегия социологического исследования, стратегия социолог. So this would be the kind of full description of this cited literature. And that's why, so this is actually the format which was produced, which was proposed by Institute of Scientific Information. This is a so-called EC format, which proposed that you write the author name, then publication year, then the title of the journal, and then volume and pages. So this is done so that to construct the kind of short name, and as there are some rules, so then it is proposed that all the articles which were, all the same articles by Toshchenko of 2020 of 2000 would be written in the same way. But WOS proposed a kind of better version, so-called short names, because sometimes here we can have some problems, something can be missed. So that's why there is another type of short names is proposed. When we just write 8 numbers of the surname, then first letter of name, and then in brackets we put the year when the publication was out, and then also volume and page. So this is the same, would be written in this way. And also for authors, authors' names are also written in some special format, and it allows to reduce the cases when different authors, when the same authors and the same works will be written differently. So this is the way how WOS deals with this problem. And talking about eLibrary, as I said, at first we were really happy that we have this information, which is already, so that we have the IDs of authors and affiliations. And we thought that it will simplify the procedure of data processing, but then it turned out that even more than half of our unique authors in our database didn't have these IDs, which are done by eLibrary, Russian Science Citation Index. And so out of 37 unique authors, only 17,000 had their IDs. And then as for affiliations, also in the third part of all affiliations, we had value 0 or none. So it means that we needed to create some approach to deal with this issue, to somehow work with our authors' disambiguation. And we actually proposed a way how we can do it. We decided that we would make a new IDs, which would include original author's ID, which is given by eLibrary, then initials of the author, then characters, 8 characters of his or her surname, and also ID of affiliation. And I think we had several workshops, seminars on this topic, so I'm not going to really describe details, but I just need to say that this allowed us to increase the number of authors with unique IDs. So we had 37. Finally, we got 37,000 of authors, and we decreased the affiliation titles, which means that we were able to better formulate these affiliations of our authors. So it helped us to have IDs for all the authors, and further we were able to make the analysis. Yeah, and talking about networks creation, as for Web of Science, so this program WOS to PAEC allows us to get the list of two-mode networks of works and authors, works and keywords, works and journals, then one-mode citation network of publications, and also some additional files with the information on when the publication was published, when the article was published, which year, and then also a special file which shows if the publication is included into the hits, so if it is found by our original search query, or it is only cited. Yeah, it is included only into these references in the full description of the publication. And then we used the same idea for this BPLIP in the BPLIP program. So we constructed the networks of works and authors and works and keywords because we needed them for analysis. And also the information when the publication was published. And so, of course, this approach, which is proposed by Web of Science, or WOS to PAEC program, is much faster. I mean, it doesn't go to comparison because it's just 2.5 minutes in comparison to several months of work in this e-library project. But I do hope that this program that we made and registered, it will help to also significantly reduce the time which is needed to the analysis of e-library data. So now comparative analysis of data sets, and now we will look at some tables. I see that the time is already a little bit over, so I think I would probably need to speed up. But let us just look at some interesting cases. So here we have the coverage for Web of Science and e-library data. So basically, this would be the same metadata which is presented in previously. And we should say that so this data for Web of Science, it is calculated using the bibliashiny package, and when you put the data before the analysis, it shows you all the it basically counts how much missing data you have in your metadata, and it highlights some cases when it is a kind of critical. So if you have like 80% of keywords plus which are missed, so it means that it's not really good to use this information for your analysis. But usually it says that if something is about like 20%, so this is then 20% of missing data is actually okay. And for you can see by what we have for Web of Science, but for Russian e-library, we have, of course, we have a lot of missing data with English language, but then we have quite good result actually. So yeah, from 20 to 50% is not regarded by bibliashiny as critical. So basically we have some missing data like 30%, but in some cases like DOI, we have a lot of missing data, and we will not be able to use it. And then talking about authors, yeah, we had, as I said, some problems with affiliations, but basically it was pretty okay. And here we can see the number of bibliographic units which we were able to analyze. And so for eLibrary, it was quite easy. Yeah, we have 75,000 of publications, then almost 4,000 of journals, and almost 38,000 of authors, and a lot of keywords, because of course they were not normalized. I mean, in eLibrary originally, in the way that you get them, there are a lot of keywords which are not really, yeah, as I said, normalized, and that's why we have this huge number of keywords. And as for counting of bibliographic units for this Web of Science subset, we used two approaches. One approach was to look what BibliaShiny, how BibliaShiny would kind of analyze how it will count the data which is uploaded to BibliaShiny, and WOS to pipe approach, because it also provide the information on how many these units we get. And so you see that we have the same amount of publications, 3,500 of publications, and then the same number of journals, and a little bit different number of authors. So it may mean that WOS to pipe, it actually reduced the number of authors a little bit, and it actually shows that probably this is because of these short names, which I explained to you before. So probably this allowed us to kind of match two authors which were not matched by BibliaShiny. But there is also a kind of there might be a problem that some authors with the same names but originally different authors could also be merged, yeah, because they have the same combination of names. But anyway, the number of authors is pretty close, I would say, but the number of keywords is different again. And for BibliaShiny, we counted the number of words in two separate fields. But WOS to pipe, it also uses normalization of keywords, so that's why it actually reduces the number of keywords. And then let's look at some distributions. So here you can see the number of publications, and of course we can see that in the library we have much more. But what is interesting that the average annual increase in eLibrary is minus 0.6, but in WOS this is a positive, and this is 5.5% for year. So we can actually see that the amount of publications is growing. Now let's look at the analysis of intersections between databases based on some statistical analysis. And here I should say that, again, there are different directions according to which we can go. And we can look at the intersections between databases which are indexed in eLibrary, because we have, as I showed you, that we had information about, so for each publication, we had information whether this publication is indexed in different scientific databases. So this is kind of one level again. So to compare on the level of eLibrary, but then the comparison of WOS and eLibrary data sets can be done. And here you can see the databases which are indexed in eLibrary. So these are the 75,000 of publications, and how, which shares of these publications are indexed in different bases. And so here you can see that only 87% of all publications that we got, according to the strategy that we used, are indexed in this Russian index of science citations, for example. And then it would be WAC, so 53%. And then for Russian science citation index, it would be also only 11%. then for Scopus 8%, and for Web of Science only 7% out of this whole amount of data. We can look at the intersection and union, of these different databases. And we looked at the level of publications and the level of journals. And looking at the level of publications, so we just used the intersection, between databases. And just a second, so this would be intersection and union. So here we can see the intersection. So how many publications we will get if we will use Russian Index of Science Citation and Russian Science Citation Index. Publications which are included into the two journals, into the two databases. Here we would have the union. So if the publication is included to Scopus or WOS or Russian Science Citation Index, so this would be, for example, core of this Russian Index of Science Citation. And actually it's quite interesting, but I think that this so we can basically look at it right now, but it will require a bit more discussion, I think. And so I'm planning that we will make some kind of substantial discussions devoted to this project, and so probably we will be able to discuss these results later. But it's interesting that so basically what I would like to say is that the usage of this database allows us to look at the intersection between different databases. It is interesting to see like how many articles we do have like in these different subparts as different subparts of different databases. And what was interesting, as I said, here we had this 87%, and it means that other 13% of publications are published in other journals, which are not indexed in Russian Index of Science Citation. So it means that this is eLibrary minus Russian Index of Science Citation. So then we have journals which are not indexed here, but which are presented in eLibrary. And so this would be these journals. The first top journal would be Economic and Socium, and then actually these journals are not really the journals which would be included into the list A of High School of Economics. But as I looked at the pages of these journals, some time ago they were included into Russian Index of Science Citation. So probably they appeared here because they still have some contract with eLibrary. So this is just an interesting observation. And talking about journals levels, so we so the majority of them are indexed in RINS. And then you can see what we have for Russian Science Citation Index, Scopus, WOS, WAC, and so on. So this is, again, these are the units, the subsets which intersect. And again, we looked at what are the shares of the intersections. And now we will move to the comparison between different databases, I mean WOS and eLibrary. And again, we will look at the level of publications and authors. So we tried to compare publications which are included into these two datasets, and we used several approaches. So at first, we thought that we can kind of merge them. We can find pairs between, I mean, from first dataset to another dataset. by DOI, but you have seen that for the majority of publications, unfortunately, we do not have DOI. That's why it allowed us to get only 655 publications, which are included into the into both of the data sets. Then we were searching by the title of publications in English language. So as you have seen, we do not have much publications in eLibrary which have their name in English, so we had to translate them, and then we removed some articles and so on, so that it allowed us to make kind of set of words which we compared to each other, and it gave us plus 32 publications. And then we generated a kind of sequence of authors, the year when the article was written, a kind of same thing which is used by WOS to PAEC. And it resulted in plus 358 publications. So in total, we found 1,013 publications, which is like 28% of all publications in WOS dataset, which are also included into this eLibrary dataset. Of course, we are not sure that we found all the similarities between publications. And of course, we would expect that we would find more, because as for the how the eLibrary data set is constructed, it looks like it definitely should include all the articles which are published in Web of Science. And that's why we would think that eLibrary will contain Web of Science dataset. But no, we didn't find it. But actually, this is kind of complicated procedure, and it could be the development for like further algorithm. So this is something which, of course, we were not able to implement during this comparative analysis. So that's why we honestly say that, so we get this number of publications, but we think that there might be some more. But also this is the result that if we would have DOI, it would be much easier to merge the articles between each other. And here, so we used also the same approach to be constructed short names of authors, and we found that we found the intersection of authors, which was like 33% of authors which are included into Web of Science were also included into eLibrary. But again, as I say, from the first glance. So we need, of course, to develop. We would need to develop more precise instruments to get such to make such analysis. And I think that this is the direction on which we would develop this project. But for now, I cannot say more. And now I think this might be the most interesting part, because this is analysis of intersections between databases based on results, as I said, on some substantial results, substantial knowledge. And here we looked at the information about works and authors collaborations, works in journals and works in keywords. So these are the networks that we used, and we looked at the intersection on the level of results that we can get using these networks. So here you can see the works and authors network, and this is the in degree. So you can see the number of authors, and how many works they have written. And this is for two data sets, for eLibrary, red one, and for Web of Science, this is blue one. And of course, as we have different number of publications, of course, it would be, we see that the numbers are different, but at the same time, it is interesting that they follow the same line. So it looks like they follow this Lotka's law, and so the law which is presented, which was which is very basic for bibliometric network analysis. So when we see that there are a lot of authors which who has the majority of authors who have just 1 or 2 works written, and there are not really a lot of authors who has a lot of publications. And we can see it, and of course it would be nice to fit it into these models, but I think we will do it for a bit more serious analysis. For now, we just made such distributions. And here you can see the list of those authors who are kind of top authors. And on the left side, this would be the data from Web of Science, and on the right side, it would be data from eLibrary. And actually, we can see that they are different authors. And those authors who appeared as top authors in our eLibrary data set, I think they have really not a lot of publications here. I checked. I don't remember right now, but it was not really 200 of publications. But some of the authors who were somewhere here in the middle, like Jan Toshchenko, for example, he would be here. So he, or Tracuk, Irina Tracuk, she has 120 publications, and here she is also in the top with 45 publications. And Toshchenko, he has 117, and here he has 20. So obviously there are different types of authors with different strategies of publication activity, but some of the authors who appeared in our eLibrary dataset as top authors, they are also presented here. But what we can actually say that these authors who are here in Web of Science, they are very well-known authors, and of course, we can expect that they would have a lot of publications in Web of Science in international journals. Then this is the out degree of this Works and Authors network, and basically in eLibrary, as I said, we made a kind of decision that we would count only from up to 8 authors. So that's why we do not actually, but we can of course get the information on the maximum number of authors in our library dataset. But what we can see is that, again, the number of publications which are written by many authors is really not high, small. And there are many publications which are written by single authors. So 62% in Web of Science and 66% in eLibrary. And for the pairs of authors, the result is very similar. And actually for 3 and 4 and so on. So we can see that the shares of authors are kind of same. Okay, now let's look at the authors and co-authors. And again, we would see these distributions of authors and how many authors have how many co-authors. And again, we can see this distribution, and which shows that the majority of authors, of course, here we didn't include those who do not have any collaborators, but there are about 30% of, no, okay, I would not lie to you. So there are pretty many authors who do not have any collaborators at all. But here we see that the majority of authors would have only 1 or 2 co-authors, and then the minority would have a lot of collaborators. Let's look at works and journals. And here we can see again the tops for Web of Science dataset and eLibrary. What we see is that actually 5 top journals would be which will sum up to 90% of publications. They are Russian journals. So the majority of publications that we analyze when we get this Web of Science database would come from Russian journals, not from international journals. And sociological исследования would be the top journal for each dataset. Even in eLibrary, we have a little bit less than in Web of Science number of publications which are published in this journal. And now we'll look at keywords. So again, the distribution, but again, for keywords, we should have made some normalization for eLibrary. I think we didn't, but for Web of Science, this is actually what we have. So here we have the keywords and the frequency, how often they appear. And the top keywords are shown here for eLibrary on the left, for Web of Science on the right, and you can see all which are marked here. These are kind of same. So we have values and value here, and Russian and sociological, which are also presented here. We have Russia, and where here we had sociology. But you can see that in Web of Science, Russian is much more represented in sense of share. So it is on the second place. Yeah, because definitely in Web of Science, in international journal, we publish something which is connected to something which is going on in Russia. Yeah. Okay, so I came to conclusions. Good news. So my main main statements would be the following. So of course, it is important to understand the structure of databases which we use for bibliographic network analysis. And it will allow us, if we know the structure of databases, we will be able to correctly formulate our research questions and interpret the results. Because you can see that we can make even though these two, sometimes the results are kind of similar, but anyway, we should take into account that, for example, Web of Science is the base of publications in the top international journals, and eLibrary includes all the Russian publications. It is eLibrary is supposed to be a good data source because it has these IDs of bibliographic units. However, as I said, we found a problem that not all of the units have these IDs, and that's why additional pre-processing of data is needed. However, we propose the research how to make this pre-processing. And we can say that Web of Science core collection, of course, covers only part of the scientific production which is published in Russia. And in an ideal situation, we think that it would be nice to combine different databases, which would be either this Russian Science Citation Index core, which would include Russian Science Citation Index, Web of Science and Scopus. Russian Index of Science Citation. Here it is written not correctly. So it will be RIST plus WOS plus Scopus, or some other combination. But we also think that it is interesting to include Scopus also inside, because according to this analysis of intersections, it is seen that in Scopus there are usually more publications are indexed in Scopus than in WOS. So that's why if we would like to include some international database, so then it would be better to also have Scopus. But if our conditions are limited, or if our resources are limited, we can choose this Russian Index of Science Citations. But if we use Web of Science, so then it would be nice to include Russian science citation index, yeah, because this is the extra database, or this also database of emerging scientific citation index. Yeah, so talking about methodology and searching methodology with search for overlaps between databases, and methodology of how to combine different databases into a single data set. This is a still open question, and this could be the direction for further research. And yeah, we are happy that we managed to register this approach to how we worked with eLibrary for collection of data, pre-processing, and construction of network. We registered it as a result of intellectual activity, and so we do hope that it will be possible for other researchers also to use it in their analysis. So I guess that's it. I'm really sorry that it took so much time. Thanks to those of you who stayed here. So dear colleagues, I would be really happy to listen to your questions and also to ask some questions to me. Probably something was not really described in much details.
Well, perhaps I can start, so hope you hear me. Thanks for such an extensive presentation. I did not wait for such a complete introduction into the differences of these two databases. So I think this is a rather important study, not only for network science, but also for science studies and scientometrics in Russia in general, because there are not many research projects comparing Web of Science and eLibrary, and they are indeed very popular sources for scientometrics. I think well, what is done is very profound and detailed. Still, I have some questions like the exact methodology of author disambiguation in Web of Science. I'm not familiar with this bib Web of Science tool. I think it's somehow connected to Bayek, which I'm not familiar with. I tried it to build. I used it to build the first network of high school of economics authors in like 10 years ago, and then switched to other tools. But still, I think it's interesting. But speaking about this task of co-authorship network, so you've already mentioned Scopus as a promising source, but for me, it's not. Why did not you try to use it? Because the Scopus provides a nice balanced alternative to these two sources, because Web of Science is perhaps too selective, and when we talk about Russian journals in social sciences or humanities, its coverage is it's somewhat strange, and it's mostly driven by some historical decisions by the ISI and even Eugene Garfield himself. So the journal coverage is, I don't think it represents even the top tier of Russian sociological journals enough. So, and mostly it's sociological исследования. And speaking of eLibrary, it is perhaps a too wide, all-including database, and it's nicely illustrated by your slide with these journals like Молодые ученые and so on. All of them are, in terms of research evaluation, applied research evaluation in Russia, they are deemed predatory journals and blacklisted. Scopus is perhaps something in the middle in terms of this. So it offers a wide coverage of Russian journals, like 800 of them, and there are more sociological journals in Scopus. Still, they don't have the Молодые ученые and so on. And what's more important, they have a really nice and time-tested and widely used algorithm of author disambiguation and author profiles, and they have author IDs, unique author IDs. And for many Russian scholars in the course of the previous 5 or 10 years, it was important to manage their Scopus profiles, so they actually tried to correct missing articles and so on. And there are some studies, for example, in Japan, that show the very high precision and recall for the Scopus author profiles, and they're easily exported via the web interface on Scopus. So actually, I've just did a simple investigation in Scopus. I downloaded all the papers in the field of sociology and political science for the last 10 years, some 15,000 papers, and they just have in the exported results, they just have a column with these unique IDs, and then you just run a very simple script to transform it into a co-authorship network. And I think if we're talking about the majority of scholars who are not very familiar with these bib Web of Science and Pike scripts, and they don't have the access to the API of eLibrary, this provides perhaps a simpler and much friendlier alternative exactly suited for your task of constructing a co-authorship network. So just the problem is that you have to be able to download this data from Scopus, maybe to ask some colleagues in Europe or elsewhere, or receive a Scopus access for reviewers of Elsevier journals. Like I'm having this access right now because I'm reviewing a paper for Elsevier journal, and they give 1 month of free Scopus access. Well, that's basically it. So in terms of results, I'm just I think maybe it would be worth to talk about results more. So I just looked at the tables with some probably famous sociologists, but I did not have enough time to reflect upon what I've seen Mikhail Sokolov in one of these tables, and yes, he actually actively publishes in the international journals, but also in Russian, now perhaps international. But how would you interpret this in terms of his academic importance for Russian sociologists? So the international sociological community, well, I think I will read it in your paper. I hope so. So as always with the network science, it's very interesting to see some applications in terms of real world interpretation of these results. And overall, I'm really impressed with the scope of your work, and I think it's really important.
Wow, Ivan, thank you so much for your comments. It's great. I can say that so today I was thinking more in a way of methodological seminar just to explain all this framework, how we used this, how we worked with these data sets, and also kind of to explain different characteristics of these databases. But of course, we will have the presentations of kind of substantial results that we get in our project, and so I do hope that we will be able to discuss these issues from this from the point of view of the results that we got. And it would be nice, I mean, at least this is my plan, to invite some sociologists who would be there in the lists, and just to try to discuss with them the results that we got. And talking about Scopus and so the program is called WOS to PAEC. And so basically, why the choice, why there was a choice of Web of Science data? There are two main motivations. First was that in the approach which we used before with Vladimir Batagel, we usually used this Web of Science data. So we have already the whole pipeline, and so it is very easy just to have to follow the same framework. So that's why there was the choice of this methodology. But talking about data, also we already got the data from our colleague from Czech Republic with all the disciplines in Russia from Web of Science. So that's why we had data, we know the methodology, so that's why we decided to combine it. But recently we discussed with Vladimir Batagel again that we should actually go to, we should switch to Scopus in the analysis, because now we have, with one of our publications, we have a problem. That the publication is on the topic of citations and bibliographic coupling structures of authors in the field of social network analysis. And the reviewer really want us to show how, in details, how was the procedure of authors disambiguation organized. But of course, this WOS to PAEC program, it allows us to somehow deal with this problem. But for Chinese names, for Korean names, we have a lot of problems. And now there are more and more scientists from China and Korea who are involved into the field of network analysis and network science. Yeah, these are a bit different disciplines. But it looks like with this approach, we just, of course, we would get the information on the top authors whom we know. But for these Chinese and Korean authors, they will basically merge into one name, one author. And this is not a satisfactory approach for our reviewer and also for us. So that's why we just discussed that we would better go to Scopus data, but we do not have now the full like this methodological approach with the programs and the whole things, but we would just need to make some additional work. But yeah, in general, it is pretty interesting for us and our colleagues also who are in the group of this project. We were even thinking to make a kind of special package for analysis of Russian data, but it would be somewhere in Python, so that all these codes which we now prepared would not be this huge codes, but they would be just some comments that. But this is for some special project that we will make in future.
Okay, thank you. So in terms of working with Scopus data, it's really simple because they just have a column with these comma separated IDs. So it's, I think, even the students are able to transform it into some sort of network with a lot of additional info like citations and so on. I have some scripts that are already doing it in my email list, and now I'm actually uploading them to GitHub. My last question was about these intellectual property rights. So are you going to upload your scripts of working with the library API to GitHub or?
Yeah, actually we did, and this is already open. I can also send you the link. We just we just learned that it was registered just last week.
Okay, so I was a bit confused.
Didn't have
what does
enough
it
time
mean?
to kind of share this information with the community. Yeah, but this always opened in the GitHub of our project. And I can even show it if you are interested. Probably some other.
Probably not today, but I'm definitely interested.
Yeah, but I just show you that it is very
yes, I see.
So I have GitHub there. I have collaboration project, and here basically this what we registered as this intellectual property is actually this.
I see. It's called collaboration. Okay.
Yeah, and we have all the descriptions here in Russian and in English. And then if you go further to the script, so then my colleagues also made a lot of descriptions and all the steps that you need to make and how to prepare. So it is, I think that if somebody will decide to do it, so then it's really done in such a great details.
Oh, great. Thanks.
So
I'll look into it.
It follows all the, so at first how to get the data, then how to pre-process it, how we worked with affiliations, some post-pre-processing, and some analysis and visualization of data, and then how we make network files. And then, so this is the whole program. And then the analysis which is done, it is already prepared in Pike, and it is not presented here. So it would be published, and it cannot be found here yet. But the how to come to the stage when you get the network files, so everything is already explained.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, so it would be nice if it would be useful. But the thing is that to work with this data set, I mean, to use this codes, you need to get data from API service of eLibrary. And I mean, I'm making a
it's for me, it's not a problem.
Yeah, I'm sure you have it, but for all other participants,
yes.
There is no open API for eLibrary, and so it is available under the contract. So this is the kind of problem.
Yeah, so perhaps you should also be considering some open databases like OpenAlex, Semantic Scholar, and so on. So I'm actually doing this, like downloading some data from Scopus even without a subscription, and then enriching it using OpenAlex and Semantic Scholar data, and it also has author IDs or often ORCID numbers, which are, I think, well suited for your network tasks.
Yes, thank you. I just remembered why another motivation for usage of Web of Science. So it is important that in our analysis we have this special way of analysis which is called main pass analysis, and for this we need information about the referenced literature. So that's why in Web of Science it is included into the description of files. So that's why we will also stick to.
Well, it's some sort of bibliographic coupling or something similar. So yes, Scopus also has this information.
Okay. So yeah, of course, now in this situation when we do not have access to these databases, of course, we need to think about different frameworks, different ways how we can get the data, not using our partners from Europe, or just to do it by ourselves. So that's why, of course, we will be developing on this direction. And I think that the workshops of you would be of much help, because I think that there should be a lot of useful information in this sense.
Yes, I'm ready to organize some of them. If I think I can find enough of participants that are interested in these APIs and have at least some knowledge of Python, and just have to do it. Thanks.
Okay, great. And thank you very much for also this information about access to Scopus as a reviewer, because I think I might also have it.
Yes, you can even submit a paper to some Elsevier journal and propose your colleague as a reviewer. This way, you have
this is a nice strategy.
Nice chance of receiving the access.
Okay. Thank you very much for these comments. This is really, this is very nice. Dear colleagues, do you also have something to say? Okay, if not, I'm really happy that we were here for 2 hours. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening and for your feedback. When we will get this, when I do hope that the paper will be published, and we will share the information about it. And also, if we will decide to organize some special meetings with Ivan, we will also share this info. Okay, so now I think we can stop the recording.
Thank you.
Спасибо.
Thank you very much.
Спасибо вам
Всего
большое.
доброго.
Вам большое